Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the return of the Mastering Blueforce, the weekly series webinars. Now, today's topic is going to be revolving around timesheet punches. So today we'll take a look at some of the common questions we've gotten over the last week or so, being on the new system, and some of the questions that have come up about timesheet punches. Now, as we've done in the past, and we'll do again today, all of the attendees on this call are currently muted. We have a huge group on the call, so we want to make sure everyone gets their questions in. So to be able to get your questions in, if you use the little GoToWebinar control panel, there is a little question section there. If you go and do me a favor and just type in the question there, we'll be able to address that at the appropriate time during our call today. Now, kind of the format for today's call is just going to be in general, kind of talk about timesheet punches. And then we're going to go through a kind of an open forum. But just before we get started, I want to address to everyone that we are doing these weekly Blueforce series webinars as a way to help everyone master the Blueforce system. Now, obviously, everyone on this phone call today is we're all on the same page here. We're all on the same level, all learning Blueforce 7. Obviously, it's an upgrade that was occurred actually 2 weeks ago. These webinars are going to be focused on the key topics or key areas that have been addressed over, in recent times. So there's a hot topic or something that comes up, I'll cover it on these calls. And we're going to try to do them every Tuesday and Thursday going forward at 2 p.m. Central Time. Now, all these webinars are being recorded and are going to be made available online via YouTube and also via the ISS Gateway. And obviously, any documentation or whatnot that may be a part of this will also be provided via the ISS Gateway site following today's session as well. Now, as I mentioned, kind of our general questions to get started back in the habit of doing these sessions every Tuesday and Thursday, or joining at least one of those 2 days. We're going to start today with some general questions about the timesheet window, and I'm going to go through some little maybe tips and tricks on that particular area, and then I'm just going to turn over to be an open forum at the end. So if any specific question, concern, topic, otherwise outside of the timesheet window itself that you want to go ahead and address, please do so by asking a question there, and I'll be able to address it at the appropriate time. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and just change my screen over. Give me 1 second. And I want to share with you the new Blueforce 7 timesheet window. Now, for all of those that have actually logged in and actually been playing around here for over the last week or so, you are very familiar with the different tabs at the top of the screen. Currently, the one I'm looking at is the timesheet tab. Now, when you click on timesheet, you will be obviously given a couple different options that you can actually go and pick what exactly you want to work with. Now, right now, we're focused on the first one, which is timesheets. But if you go through the different options, some of them are new options. And as I mentioned, kind of when we did the upgrade, is we weren't going to unveil any new functionality at this time. We're going to go ahead and wait a little bit, get everyone get their feet wet, get used to the system before we kind of show you some of these new functions that are in here. But under the timesheet menu, this is a good time to go and address a couple of different options that you might be able to see depending on your access. Now, I know everyone on here can see timesheets. There is something called a clock group timesheet, which we're not going to go down that road just yet, so we'll leave that alone. But you also have manual timesheets. So one of the things to keep in mind, and this is maybe a refresher for some of you, but the timesheets, the very first option at the top of the list, is going to be for your normal, regular, current pay period timesheets. Now, as you recall, one of the big changes between Blueforce 6 and the new Blueforce 7 is that your time card and timesheet processes have been combined into one nice piece. So the nice piece that we're talking about here is under timesheets. The secondary one that's currently highlighted here, manual timesheets, is going to be for your back pay scenarios, times where we've not paid an employee correctly and we have to go in there and create a manual timesheet. That is where that is going to be handled, under manual timesheets. Now, furthermore, you've got some other options, and I'll use future webinars to cover the other options on this list. But you have budgets, you have mass load PTO, you have a PTO request. All these are functions that were available in Blueforce 6 that you may or may not have taken the opportunity to use. We'll explain those in more detail as we go further down the road on future webinars. Now, as a side note, I will also kind of let everyone in that's on this call that we are going to be creating small snippets, small videos of different pieces of the different processes that you do in Blueforce. And those videos will be available as well for you to view in the coming weeks as those will get created and put out on a site that everyone can access. So clicking on timesheets, that's going to give us the window that I'm showing here right now on this screen. Now, the screen here shows the managed time, it says managed timesheets. And what that actually does is just letting you know that you can do a variety of different things with your timesheets. Now, the new process, as you figured out kind of how it works now, is that you are immediately given, based on your job selection, a listing of all the different timesheets that meet that criteria. Now, keep in mind that you have the ability in that kind of the filter section, I guess you can call it, for lack of a better word, up here in the top section, to actually tell the system what exactly you want to see. Now, by default, a lot of you have figured this out kind of the hard way, but by default, the dates are always going, when you log in, the dates automatically show as today's date as being the end date, and yesterday's date as being the start date. So you have to make it a point to come in here to see all of the different dates. Like, for example, if you're looking at your payroll from last week and you want to see your timesheets for that pay period, then obviously you're going to hit that dates field and then go in there and pick the dates accordingly. Now, keep in mind here, these dates, you have little filters here that you can use. You can use the little calendar function, or you can just type into that field as needed. The key thing to keep in mind is when you alter the dates, you must hit apply here, the little green button. Otherwise, it's not going to accept your entries. Now, the one key thing to keep in mind about the managed timesheet screen is in order to go back to kind of the way Blueforce 6 worked and actually see the old timesheet view or see the old punch view, you actually have to drill down into the actual timesheet itself. So looking here, you will see that I have a mix of different jobs. I have a few jobs from San Antonio, a few jobs from the Houston area. And when I go to these jobs, it's looking at any situation, any punches as part of my timesheets for the date range of 2/5 to 2/6. Now, as I go through here, you also will notice that some of these have open exceptions noted. Some show just plain open. Now, let me address the ones that are just plain open. For example, this one is right here. This one is telling you that the punches that have come in for that particular job, for that particular reporting period, and notice one thing I will bring to your attention, notice the reporting period says 2/3 to 2/9, but wait a minute, at the very top of the screen, we just selected 2/5 to 2/6. Keep in mind, the timesheets are based on a period by period basis. What the timesheets are based on are reporting periods. It means the week, the pay week. So in that case, it's always going to show you at the top of the screen. If I just pick the 5th of February, the 5th happens to be in that pay week of the 3rd through the 9th. So the system will make available the full timesheet to your viewing. So you got to keep that in mind. That's all it's doing. It's just making sure that you do see the whole period in there instead of just one particular day in question. So kind of with that, one of the things also you'll notice here is like I said, the open exceptions. The open exceptions are telling you, well, first off, the open is telling you that the time was collected without an issue. There are no open exceptions, meaning there's no missed punches. There's no issues where an employee forgot to punch in, or no issues where an employee, had a mismatched fingerprint or call from a unapproved phone number. The open is perfect. It's exactly what we want to see. Now, those that are in the red, kind of reddish shade, let's say open exceptions followed by a number. For example, the very first one on the list here shows 9 open exceptions. What that is telling you is that currently, as it sits, for this particular reporting period, we have 9 situations where an employee is partially punched, but maybe they punched in but didn't punch out, or vice versa. Or, like I said, they had an issue on the way they were able to punch in, maybe a mismatched fingerprint or something along those lines. And anyhow, in those cases, you can quickly go to this managed timesheet view and just simply click on the actual blue link for open exceptions to get into the actual punches view. Same thing here with the reporting period. If I just click on the actual date range, I can get there as well. For example, for the ones that are in the open state, there's no link here. It's just simply one available blue link for me to get into that particular time, those time punches. And that was a popular question where someone could not get into a timesheet punches just because they were unfamiliar with this new view. Now, there are some other cool things on this particular view that I'll just quickly address and we'll move on, but you do have the option over here to reprocess open punches. And I just want to keep that in mind that all those that are on this phone call who have access to go and do that can go in there and reprocess open punches, especially in cases where we have maybe had an issue with a pay rate or maybe a shift differential rule or something was changed during this pay period. It doesn't hurt you to go in there and click on reprocess just to make sure that the rules, the proper amounts, everything get applied correctly to the employee's time punches. Now, let me go ahead and clear my screen one more time. And I'm going to click this time on the open exceptions. And I'll just pick open exceptions for 1800 West Loop South. And there's 2 open exceptions there. And when I click on that link, it's going to take me straight to the open exceptions for that particular job. Notice the difference. At the top of the screen, you have something called punch exceptions. At the bottom of the screen, you have something called just punches. So what that is telling you is by going up here to punch exceptions, let me just circle this area real quick. This section that I've circled here in red is letting you know that these are the bad punches. They have been put out in a timeout. They've been segregated from all the other punches because there's an issue with those punches. Now, as a reviewer, as an editor, as a submitter, or an approver, and you come into this timesheet punch screen, you see these punch exceptions sitting there, keep in mind that you always want to look first at the date because the date might signify that there's somebody still on the clock. And in this case, both of these employees have punched in. One of them has punched in at 1:24, which is just about almost an hour ago. And the reason it's an exception is because the system has not recorded a punch out yet. But we can only assume that they are still, they're still on the clock and they're still working. So 1:24 was their in punch. We're waiting for an out. Now the other one, the first punch, you'll notice here that the rate type is lunch. In the same scenario, the person just clocked out for lunch, and they are hopefully coming back from lunch and will punch back in to work momentarily. Now in both of these cases, these are cases where we should know that they are actually, the clock is just waiting, the system, whatever it may be, is waiting for an out punch to be recorded. And I say clock here because one of the new fields or new columns are available for you is source. So as I did in my Blueforce 7 webinar, intro to webinar, I mentioned that the source column is not going to be colored anymore. You're not going to be able to quickly tell the punch what color it is, if it's green, if it's if it's like a peach color, if it's white. That color coding is gone. It's a lot cleaner screen. And the main reason is now is you have a source column that tells you where that punch came from. So this is telling me right now that the 2 in punches that are here came from the Walter time clocks. Now at the bottom of the screen you have all the good punches. So the good punches are down here at the bottom of the screen. And these are the punches as they've been accumulated for the actual reporting period, or as I mentioned earlier, the pay week. So we all know just about everyone, 99.9% of us, pretty much, start our pay week on Saturday morning and it ends on Friday. So when you look at your punches down at the bottom of the screen, those good punches are just letting you know these are punches that have come in perfectly fine or more likely has been corrected already, no longer a bad punch. So for example, down here, you'll see there's a handful that have some yellows and oranges. And just keep in mind the same color scheme works as in Blueforce 6. The oranges right here, I'm circling in red, is letting you know that that was a change that was made to a punch. So in this case, we actually coded this person's time, Rosa Arce, to a work order. And then these yellow punches that are over here were actually manually added. And you can tell that they were manually added because they were vacation time. This one was just manually added and it's regular time. But nevertheless, the same color scheme for yellows and oranges still stand as they did in Blueforce 6. Yellows are telling you they were manual entries. Oranges are letting you know that a change was made to a punch, or an edit was made to the punch record. So let me go ahead and clear my screen once again. Once again, taking just a quick general overview of the time punches area, just so we're all on the same page going forward for future webinars and topics we go through. But kind of going through here, this is your good punches at the bottom, bad punches at the top. Now, what some of you may or may not have noticed, one of the questions came is, how do I get in to see my, my old timesheet view? What's going on? Well, what you may or may not have noticed is you have 4 different tabs appear at the top of the timesheet punches window. And I'll drive back how I got here momentarily, but keep in mind the first tab is punches. The second tab here is details. The third tab is an overview tab, which gives you some information. And then lastly, the fourth tab, which is here, which might be beneficial to some of you, it shows you all the allocations that were made with employees' time, whether it be the employee did it themselves, or if someone, maybe an admin or someone, did a allocation for that employee. So those are 4 tabs that are hidden there. They don't look like tabs. Only the first one really looks like a tab, but there's 4 different little areas up there. Now, tab 1, listed as punches, is your old, essentially, this is your old time card view. It has all the time cards that you would see. They're called punches now, or referred to as timesheet punches, as you would have gotten them in Blueforce 6 from the different time collection devices. Tells you the rate, tells you the time in, tells you the time out, tells you the total basic hours that were kind of figured off of those punches. And really, this one adds a new column where it tells you where the punches came from. Gives you all the information that you saw in the old time card screen. The second tab, which I'm going to show you momentarily, details, is the old timesheet tab that you're familiar with in Blueforce 6. Many of you went to timesheet details to submit and approve. Some of you went there just to see the total summary hours view of your employees. So keep in mind, punches will always show you what the employee did, they punched in, punched out, what source of their punch was, where they punched in at. The details tab will actually go one step further and actually show you the detail behind that of those employees. So for now, I can actually tell you that my employees here, for example, we'll pick on Ms. Rosa again. Rosa here is the employee, regular pay, and she had 4 hours on Monday and Tuesday. Now, more so further down, you'll have some other information that's provided for you based on, based on if you have access to rates, if you have access to other information, you'll see that information over to the far right-hand side. But nevertheless, this gives you a summarized view based on the timesheet level itself. Now, one of the questions that came up over the last couple of weeks and for payroll is, how do I submit my timesheet? Well, if you're going to go back to the details tab, which is the old timesheet view, you also have the old submit timesheets option at the top of the timesheet window. Now, above the timesheet, that submit timesheet allows the submitter to go and submit the timesheet. Once a submitter has submitted the timesheet, that little green button will change, and it will now say approve timesheet. So the approver can come in and now approve a timesheet. So essentially, the same functionality is there. Don't let the view change confuse you any. I know a lot here in the middle, there's a lot of little change in here as well. But don't let that confuse you. It's still the same process, still same view, same information still being provided to you, just in a little different format. And I'll just quickly show you. So that's tab 1 is punches, tab 2 is details. Tab 3 now, overview. We'll give you some more of a graphic. Now, this is probably more from a manager standpoint. Maybe the district managers that are on the phone call will be able to use this a little bit more, where you'll be able to see how your tasks are rolled up at the bottom of this window. You'll see that how much hours and how many budgeted hours you have for those specific tasks. Now, as you know, as a district manager, VP of Ops, general manager, etc., you load budgets into JD Edwards. And then those budgets, in turn, make their way over to Blueforce. That's where we get the budgeted hours. And these budgeted hours are going to be broken up to the different tasks. So So you can actually see what your actuals are under regular and OT and other and total hours versus your budgeted hours. So you've got a little chart here in the far right-hand column. Let me go and clear my screen here. I know it's kind of scribbled here, but here under hours difference, you can kind of see where you currently are under regular hours, where you're budgeted for this week, and we're at Tuesday right now. So right now we still have 781 hours to go, and that little green bar is the little green section of that bar is letting you know that you're still way under. A full bar is letting you know that you kind of comparison how many hours to where you're at. That full bar is letting you know kind of representation of where you're at, actual versus budgeted. So this is just once again the overview tab that's available now on the timesheet view. And then lastly, like I mentioned, you have allocations. If you're doing a lot of allocations, if you're moving time around, you can come over here and see, you know, the different punches that were accumulated. Now notice here you have a legend at the top of the screen, and the legend tells you reds mean that you have partial allocations, greens mean that you've did some timesheet allocations, the blues telling you that you have no allocations. What an allocation is nothing more than having you say, I need to redistribute or I have to move my time to maybe appropriate job, or maybe reclassify the employee's time from a custodian to a porter, or a semblance of something like that. But bottom line, all the blues here are basically scenarios where we have not touched it. The employees punched in, employees punched out. That the time that they punched in are going through the respective task and job correctly. However, the one that's in green here for Petra Zapata, she had an allocation, and we know that that allocation happens to be they allocated her time to a work order. The work order column is not showing here, but I can quickly go in there and view that information in detail if I needed to. But bottom line, this window we'll probably be introducing a little bit more and using a little bit more, but this screen basically highlights those scenarios where I've gone in and moved time to maybe a different job, a work order, a different task, etc. And once again, this is called allocations. Now, from the specialized services side, I'm not sure if too many of you are actually using this. I know from the IFS side, we do have several scenarios where time is consistently being allocated. So once again, this is just a big picture view of that process. But all in all, those 4 tabs are important to this particular timesheet. So the way I got here, let me start fresh. I'm gonna go back to my dashboard view. And most of you, when you log in to Blueforce, you start out here at this particular view. And I'm gonna quickly, we'll probably reiterate this on other webinars, but I wanna quickly just go over preferences with you as well, because preferences dictate kind of what you see when you first log into the system. But nevertheless, I'm gonna start here. This is why I logged in. I'm at the dashboard view. If I click on timesheet at the top of the screen, I have a listing of all these different options. And let me note again that some of you on this phone call may or may not be getting all these options. That's simply because you don't have access to all these different pieces. But I'm gonna click on timesheets because that's where I wanna go work with my regular timesheet. As I mentioned earlier, if I need to work with my manual timesheet, I can always click on manual timesheet there as well. Keep in mind, both are very similar in the way they work. The only difference is manual timesheet is where we go and log old time. In other words, time from prior pay periods, time we missed paying an employee, hours they're due, etc. It is important that we separate those scenarios and do them as manual timesheets, because a lot of our budgeting reports go back into those times and those hours that we've budgeted for those particular periods. And if we're actually paying out of the current pay period, which we tend to do a lot, unfortunately, we shouldn't be doing that. But if we pay them out of the current pay period, what's going to happen is your budget for the current week will be out of whack. And then you'll have to answer as to why we're over budget X amount of hours. So once again, manual timesheets are for those scenarios where we have money due to an employee because we mispaid, we didn't pay them correctly, or essentially prior pay period paid is due to that employee. But I'm going to click on timesheets, and when I click on timesheets, that now takes me over to my manage window, to which now I have the ability of going in here and picking the timesheet that I want to work with. So in this case, I will pick on the same thing, 1800 West Loop South, and I can access the timesheet by clicking on the reporting period, date range, or simply clicking on the open exceptions. The open exceptions, once again, are there to let you know that you have issues with those punches. And as I've stressed, for those that I've talked to over the last couple of weeks, I've stressed that, you have to make it a point of going there and check your time daily. I know sometimes it's hard to do, but now Blueforce has made it easier for you in that it tells you specifically how many punches need to be fixed, and they're showing us open exceptions. Instead of you having to scroll through all the time, through all the days to find out which ones were exceptions, they're segregated there for you purposely so you can quickly fix them and be on your way. So once I go into that particular timesheet, then I have the determination if I want to look at the punches, if I want to look at the details, if I want to look at the overview or the allocations. And then, once again, those 4 tabs are at the top of the screen. Keep in mind, punches tab, the number 1 tab, which is showing right here on the screen, that is your old time card view, and the one on label number 2 for details, that is your old timesheet view. So for those that have used Blueforce since its inception here at ISS, which has been over 3 years, I know you're familiar with Blueforce 6. Blueforce 7 probably threw a little curveball at you, but years now, it's still really the same product, just a little different, cleaner view straight across the board. So that right there is just a quick look at the timesheet punches and kind of doing some navigation in that area. Now, once you are here at the timesheet punches window under the punches tab, this is where you have the ability to edit a punch. This is where you have the ability to zero out a punch or approve a punch. Now, one thing I will note, and I know this happens to the best of us, when you see the word approve, you quickly think, oh no, this approve right here, that means I need to be an approver to approve a punch exception. That is not the case. The word approve here is to allow you to approve any exception that may have appeared on your listing. So if you are an editor, submitter, or an approver, and you have visibility to the punch exceptions, and you want to come in here and approve an exception, all you're going to do is going to check that box, and then you're going to click on approve. And when you do that, the system will approve that punch. Now, in this case, in this particular example, you're not going to want to do that because, obviously, like I mentioned, the employee is still on the clock. They've just punched in for their lunch or for the job, and the system is waiting for an out punch. The other option here is zero out. Zero out allows you to zero out a punch if there's a double punch, and that's really the only situation in which we use a zero punch. That's a scenario where an employee may have punched in and punched out, and then maybe they're not paying attention and they punch out again. Well, that leaves an open punch out there, and in those cases, you can go out and zero out that punch. Otherwise, we don't want to use zero out for just any other situation. Now, obviously, the third option here is edit punches. That now allows me to edit that punch. Maybe that employee did go home. Maybe that employee didn't, never punched out. For example, Alma Gallegos shown here is just my second example under punch exceptions. In those scenarios, if that happens to be the case, you could actually check that box, click on edit punches, and the system will take you into the edit punch view. This is the same view. I think the old view was kind of orange. It had orange and grays and ugly view that popped up. Well, same thing here. It's a cleaner view. You have the same fields. You have job available for you. You have the porter field. You have the in, the out. Then you have the out. And then you have a field where you can actually put in the correct out time. So keep in mind, let's say this employee punched in at 1:24, but she didn't punch out at 5 o'clock like she was supposed to. I can go in there and put 1700. And one of the things I'll point out real fast before, and I'll briefly talk about preferences, is your time punches. My punches right now are showing in military time because I chose to use that as my preference. Many of you have elected to go the other route now and actually have the preference of standard time with AM, PM being an option. So your view might be different. So don't panic by seeing my screen be a little different here. It's based on your preference. I chose this route because I've been stuck with Blueforce for a long time now, and I'm used to military time, so I'm going to keep that apples to apples and keep going that route. Now, continuing on, you have rate type. you have work order, and then you have reason code. Now I'm logged in right now under Google Chrome, showing this example, and I kind of purposely did that so you could actually see that the fields aren't quite lining up. And that's been a hot topic on help desk tickets, and I know a few of you probably have not reported and just kind of been playing with it. This is not standard for Blueforce, and it's actually an issue with the browser. So there's a setting within the browser that needs to be adjusted in order to make your fields line up correctly. So if you, I'm just kind of throwing it out there, if you're having this issue where your items, your fields aren't lining up properly, submit a help desk ticket, and a member of my team will come back and walk you through the fix for that. It's a quick little fix. It's a settings change within Google Chrome. It's really not a Blueforce 7 issue. It's a browser issue. But nevertheless, once you go in here and edit the punch, you'll still be required to put a reason code. And these are the same reason codes we had on Blueforce 6. So add miss punches for every different reason. If you have to correct a job or a task, or if you have to correct hours, there's different reasons why you would do that. Once you make that reason code, you hit save at the bottom right-hand corner, to which I'm not going to save this because this is actually a live record. And once you hit save, the system will remove that punch exception from the bad or naughty list up here. So basically imagine that this line goes away, this line will disappear, and will then be moved to the bottom section where now it's the good list. It's on the good section of punches. So that's just a quick run through over edit punches. You have full access to edit the punches as an editor, submitter, or approver, but keep in mind, we just do not edit punches just for the sake of being able to edit. We want to make sure that we don't touch an employee's punch unless it's warranted. Maybe the employee had an issue with the clock, couldn't punch out, you have to fill in the punch for them, or maybe they punched in at 2 o'clock, punched out at 5, went back to work, and you have to come back and edit their punch because they never punched back in and punched back out like they should have. So stuff like that, those type of scenarios, we still want to keep in mind. Now, one of the things you'll hear as we get a little bit further down in Blueforce 7, we're still doing the compliance. We're still looking at the compliance scoring. And for the most part, as a company, we've done excellent on compliance, keeping up, making sure the employees are punching in, punching out, making sure we keep the manual entries and editing of real employee time to a minimum. So we've done exceptional on that. So you'll hear a bigger push, and you'll see more visibility on that in the coming weeks as well. So that was just kind of my first initial thought to this first webinar is going through just a quick overview of the timesheet punches area. And I think from a question standpoint, we've addressed all the questions that have come through. So at this point, I'm going to go show preferences real quick to show you a little bit about the preferences piece. But as I do that, if there are any questions that anyone on this phone call has in general about Blueforce 7, like I said, I want to use the remaining time after I show preferences, the last 15, 20 minutes of this call, as an open forum for anybody who may have any questions or want to resolve a little question or so, one question or two that they may have right now on the call live. But let me go back, and while those questions come through, I'm going to go ahead and take you to the preferences area of your Blueforce 7. Now, everyone may already have realized that at the very top right-hand corner, you do see your name, and there is a small little drop down right to the right of your, and then you have a variety of different sections up there, different options that you can actually choose to pick. One of the options there is My Preferences. Now, when you logged into Blueforce 7 the first time, it took you to I think it took you through 3 different pages of preferences they wanted you to set up. Many of us, just because we're busy, in a hurry, didn't want to go and mess with that, you just kind of said next, 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 and went through, and we're done with it. And that's fine. Now that you have some time, you can come back and set those preferences the way you want them to be seen. So by clicking on My Preferences, it's going to take you through these same 3 screens once again to allow you afford you the opportunity there now to go and fill in the options as you want. The first page, as you see here, is going to give you a quick welcome and introduction to Blueforce 7. The second page is going to actually talk about your general preferences. And then the third page is going to talk about the jobs and the job search selection that you can actually set up so that every time you log into Blueforce, it automatically takes you to the jobs you told the system you want to initially work with. So that, and as I'll explain a little bit, is you may have access to 50 different jobs. Do you really want to work with all 50 every time you log into Blueforce? Maybe you have access to 50, but you want to keep your eyes on 10 jobs specifically. I can go through the jobs screen, pick just the 10 jobs I want to work with, and when I log in the next time into Blueforce, it's going to take me straight just to those 10 jobs. Now, if I want to add additional jobs, I can quickly do that via the job search utility that's in here. So real quick, first tab, like it says, the Welcome tab. There's really nothing to this tab other than you can go through here and read about some options they have in the system: timesheets, budgets, and shifts and schedules. Now, we will have a webinar down the road here on budgets. We'll have another webinar on shifts and schedules, and as well as some those short videos that you quickly view as you go through the different processes in Blueforce 7. Now, at the top of the screen, one thing that you may or may not have noticed is that you also have a help. And I want to address it right now, and I'll address it again one more time before we go. But your little help is a little question mark. Now, this help is actually one of the little tips I want to share with everyone on this phone call. And I urge you to share that with others that work with you that may not have been able to make this webinar or invite them to come on Thursday's webinar. But nevertheless, as you go through, let's say you're doing a timesheet and you're on the edit, you're in edit punches, and you just don't remember how to finish the process of editing a punch. If I go to the very top of the screen and click on this question mark, it's going to provide you some documentation on the process that you are currently working on. So instead of having to put a help desk ticket, instead of having to call support for help, you can quickly hit the question mark and it's going to pull up a little document in regards to the function or process you're currently involved in. And that is the little question mark at the very top of the screen. I'll show you that here, just like this. If I click on the question mark now, it's going to tell me I'm in my setting up my preferences, and it's going to walk you through setting up your preferences. So it gives you a little information step by step, tells you step 1 on the menu, click the username, click preferences, step 2, and so forth. So it goes through all the little processes there for you. And that's a quick way of getting help. So on preferences screen here, I'm going to click next, go to page 2. Now my first option is English for my preferred language, but if maybe I am a Spanish speaker and I want this to be in Spanish and I log into Blueforce 7, I have the ability to pick Spanish. If I'm in Canada and I want to see French, I can make everything in French. So you have a couple different options for languages. We always get questions about additional languages. There are some additional language packs that are being worked on, and they will be available in short order, but right now this is all we have to offer. And I would say leave it at US English unless you want to change it to something else. Time format, 24-hour clock, which is military time, or do you want to go into the AM, PM clock? And keep in mind, your time doesn't really matter which one you pick. Your time will be reflected, your employee's time will be reflected correctly in the system. So if you have one district manager that uses a 24-hour clock and another that uses the AM, PM clock, it doesn't matter. It's all the same time, and the system knows what your preference is. Notifications, one of the things that you are required now is to note your correct email address. So make sure your email address is correct in the system. And if you have a text service you want to set up here, you can go in here and put in your phone number and put in the proper provider. That way, text messages can be sent if we choose to send alerts by SMS or alerts by email, or more specifically, if you enable any submission approval notifications, meaning that if I submit, I get a little receipt that I submitted, and also notify the approver. If they have it selected here, approver would get a message letting them know that the submitter has done their job. So notifications work that way. Also enabling PTO notifications. If PTO is used, whether you're an employee or a submitter, approver, editor, whatever it may be, PTO will also be notified to the users as well. So that's another cool little function that's there. Then lastly, you have your start page. What page do you want to start in? Do you want to start in the dashboard view? If you're using the dashboard, that's a good place to start. Maybe you don't care about the dashboard. Maybe you're not using that functionality. And once again, we'll do a webinar and get more in depth into dashboards down the road. But maybe you want your system to always start a timesheet. Well, then you can automatically select timesheet, and every time you log in, your first view you get is the timesheet. So that is the second tab or second page. That's the preferences page. And then lastly, I have the job selection criteria window. So here I get to see all the different jobs I have access to, but maybe I only want to, let's see, Chase is one of them. Yep, only want to see the Chase jobs when I log in. Well, in that case, I can go in here and simply just pick all the jobs that I want to see. Notice here, I have access to all these jobs. I have 39 pages of jobs that I can actually see right now, but I only want to deal with these 3 jobs when I log in every day. So what I would do is to select those 3 jobs, and then I'm going to hit finish. And the system is now going to remember those 3 jobs I picked, and it's going to ask me to log back in. And when I log back in, it's going to take me straight. I think the previous window I said take me to the timesheet view. So take me to the timesheet view for the 3 jobs that I have selected. If at any point I choose to add more jobs, I can come back into preferences and change my preferences. This is really my default. I usually look my default view, I guess you can refer to it as. But if I just want to add 2 more jobs for this particular day in question, then I can just do like I do otherwise, just go into job and job search and just look for those jobs and add them to my criteria that I've already picked. So same concept. I think the job search was on the left-hand column in Blueforce 6. It's got its own little section up there in Blueforce 7. But nevertheless, that is your preferences. Gives you a little way of going around and you know, making it more customizable, making the system a little more work for you a little bit better than Blueforce 6 did. So all in all, I covered today kind of the timesheet view, kind of go through the general timesheet, kind of navigate through the timesheet, how to edit some punches, and then quickly went through the preferences screen just so you were familiar with the different preferences that are out there and allow you to go back there and adjust those accordingly now that you have a little more time. Now looking at the questions bank, I don't see any new questions or anything that were kind of being asked from an open forum standpoint. So I'm going to go ahead and end the webinar here. That's kind of what my goal was, just to give you a quick introduction, make sure we're all on the same page. And I want to make a quick reference here that we do have a way of getting support, and I want to make sure that everyone is familiar with that. Make sure that you either put a help desk ticket for any ePay support. You can go straight to our fms.iss.biz website, or you can more specifically call the help desk directly. Now, the way our help desk is set up now, structured, is if you go in through the prompts and choose ePay as the help desk avenue you want to take, it'll actually ring at one of my team's phones. So there'll be myself, Tiandra, Jade, or Beth. One of us will be able to direct you and help you with that ePay question. Now, if we're away from our desk or we are on other calls, that call will actually be transferred straight to our National Service Center, at which point you can actually leave a message and they'll actually create a ticket for you. And we'll get back to you as soon as we can. So 2 options for support. We ask that you do not contact ePay support directly. We have found out lately that ePay support means to help, wants to help, and wants to give our users support. However, there are some things we do a little differently from their standard customers, so they don't often give you the correct answer. So if you just either put a help desk ticket or call us here in San Antonio at 210-495-6093. Now, to continue, we'll be doing the same webinar again on Thursday at 2 p.m. Central, and then we'll continue next week with new topics on Tuesday and Thursday, once again at 2 p.m. Central, as we continue the Mastering Blueforce, the weekly series webinars. So until we talk again, thank you for joining me today. I hope you have a good, happy rest of your Tuesday and remainder of the week. We'll talk to you again real soon. Thank you.